Hello, 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 and welcome to What Sharon Said. Of course, despite what you just saw on the countdown screen, this is actually episode 7, titled Living the Legacy. The tech has already been teching, and we're literally less than a minute in, but don't worry about it. I am delighted to welcome to the show today my first ever guest, and I'm sure you all know who that is. This is my sister, Lisa Hurley. She is the author of Space to Exhale. Lisa, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much, sis. I am so excited to be here. And this episode means so much. And as you pointed out, I didn't even realize at the time when you're like, hey, let's do an episode, that today is actually the 1 month anniversary of my publication day. So to be having this conversation and doing this episode with my blood sister and my soul sister, right?
Before we even get into it, how does it feel to be 1 month in to being a published author?
It feels fabulous. It feels fabulous. And actually, as it happens, I actually work, my 9 to 5 office is close to actually Wiley's office, And so every now and then, I pass by and I see it and I just smile to myself, and to be here and be 1 month in, and for the book to be really out in the world, and people are posting photos with it, people are leaving reviews, people are saying beautiful things, and it feels amazing because, as we both know, it was quite an interesting journey.
It was quite an interesting journey, and we will definitely get to that. Let me just welcome a few people. Welcome, Jillian. Welcome, Latrice. So happy to have you in the audience joining us live. Appreciate you lots and lots.
Yes, hey
So,
Jillian,
yes, I know it has been a journey. I know it has been a journey.
girl.
So, first of all, let's set the scene a little bit
Hmm.
and talk a little bit about the legacy we both inherited. And I know that you posted about this on LinkedIn, and I'm just going to bring this up for a minute so that people can see what we're talking about. Right? Would you like to talk us through what we're looking at here? Talk us through
Okay.
this legacy.
Yes, yes, yes. So this is the Hurley Publishing legacy. That's all. I don't know what else to call it, but that is what it is. So the top three books were either are written slash edited slash translated by our father, um, E. Anthony Hurley, Professor Emeritus of Stony Brook University. And he used to lead the Africana Studies Department. So that is what the top row is. The top row is, that is books, and that's for us. That's the origin, right? That's the origin. And then guess who comes next? Big sis, Sharon Hurley Hall. And so we have Exploring Shadism on one side. That was your first book in print, I believe,
Yes,
right?
that is correct.
And then I'm Tired of Racism, your second book. This is your banner book that
This
has,
is my banner book. This is my best book so far.
yeah, so far, so far. And I remember when I received my copy, because I pre-ordered. Yes, I know I was going to get free copies from you, but I'm like, no, I'm also going to go and pre-order. So I remember when
Like I did for yours.
you did the same for me, right?
Yes.
But girl, your both of them, beautiful books. They look good. Of course, they're beautifully written. They feel good, and book people will understand texture matters, right? So we have Potter, Antonius, Antonio as Potter, right?
You're doing well with the Latin. You're doing well with the Latin.
Doing well.
Welcoming, before you continue, let me just say hi to Linda, to Rosemary. Thanks for joining us live. Yes, go on. We got as far as Potter. Let me hear you
Right.
now.
So we've got Potter. Wait, shoot. I forgot the rest.
Soror
Remember Caecilius as Pater,
as
Metella
Pater, I
as
do.
Mater, Quintus as Filius.
Soror.
I forgot anyway. Yes.
For,
So
for Soror for
Soror.
sister. Let's go with
Soror is
that.
sister. Right. And so Soror is Sharon the Soror is the middle row. And then, I am baby sis. So I have my one little book there underneath, following in the footsteps. following in the footsteps of
And it
my
is
sister,
beautiful.
who is following in the footsteps of our father. And I remember at some point, I don't even know, it was after I had written, I was in the marketing phase and just kind of like thinking of ideas and also thinking about what the whole journey, the publishing journey meant to me, what it meant to me to be an author. And then all of a sudden this came to me. I'm like, but I am actually one in a line of authors. And I actually
Absolutely.
went and I have all of these books on my bookshelf, of course, right?
Hmm.
And I was like, wait, I have, as Latrice would say, I have a Hurley section in my bookshelf, right? Right, Latrice?
Yeah.
And just realizing, wait, so Daddy has three books. And I know there's more than three that he's contributed to, but these are his
Yeah.
banner books. And then you have your two banner books and what is my current banner book. And I am just excited and honored and proud to be continuing this legacy. I hadn't actually realized when I first started writing that I was one in a line of. And so to realize it, and
Yes.
not just realize it, but see it, to see it in this image, the three, then the two, then the one. This is our family tree in publishing form, and it's beautiful. Like how did you feel when you first saw it?
When I saw that, it's funny because sometimes you just take what's happening in your family for granted,
Mhm.
right? This is the truth. Like I knew that our father had published books and edited books and translated books, right? He was a professor of French African
Yes.
literature,
Hmm.
right? And but to see it like that in a sort of family tree, that was
Yes.
extremely meaningful. It was extremely
Mhm.
meaningful. It felt like things had been handed down and passed on,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
Legacy is
that is
important.
very important for us, especially as Black women. It is important for us to inherit excellence, to pass on excellence, to embody excellence. And
Hmm.
this is not to say that we need to tire ourselves out, because exhale, right?
Yes. Yes.
But still, it means a lot. If you think, if you can see it, you can be it, right?
That's it. That's it in an image right there. If you can see
If
it,
you
you
have
can be
somebody
it.
in your family that
That
has published a book, then that becomes something that is possible. Exactly. And so
it
I
is now,
think
it is now possible.
it is now possible. And it was so meaningful that you put that all together, right? And so that we could visualize it and everybody else could visualize it,
Yeah,
you
yeah. And
know.
I sent it to Daddy and asked him, how he felt about it. And he teared up. He teared up a little bit.
He
He
did.
teared up. He did. He teared up. He got a little bit verklempt. He teared up a bit, and he said that he felt. Um, I don't know if the actual word he used was complete, but
Yeah.
something akin to that. Like he has done part of what he was supposed to fulfill, has been fulfilled, and he felt and feels proud and honored. He's proud of us both. Um, and to see it in that form, that just says it all. And I remember when I first posted this, I referenced the Barbados national anthem,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
We write our names on history's page with expectations great, right?
Literally.
And this is what we have done. This is
This
what we
is
have
what we
done.
have
I
done.
am immensely proud of us both.
I am too. I am too. And to be coming from a line of Barbadian authors,
Hmm.
right? And Barbadian non-fiction authors. Can I just add that as well? Right? Because that in itself is also quite unusual.
I was
I
like, this is
mean,
a micro category. We actually are going to have to do some research on that. We,
yeah, I mean, no,
we
there
might
are
be the
people,
category, but we'll check.
there are people who have done non-fiction, well-respected people,
Of
C.L.R.
course.
James, Eric Williams, Walter Rodney, who have done big historical things, grappling with the legacy
Right.
of colonialism.
Right. Their works, I would say, are part of the Caribbean literary canon. The
Absolutely.
people, the authors that you mentioned, right? Those
Yes.
are, I mean, these are the people that some of whom were. were our father's
Contemporaries, our parents'
contemporaries.
contemporaries, in fact, many of them, because I'm
Yeah.
not sure that many of these authors would have had the chance to publish much before then. You
Yes.
know, at most, even the oldest of them must be no more than 10 years older than our parents. So it's
Yes.
a generational legacy there, for
It is.
sure.
It is. And I know. I mean, of course, because ADHD, but I'm blanking on some names now. But I know that there are famous to us, famous
Hmm.
West Indian authors that
Hmm.
were, uncle this and auntie that to
Of
us,
course,
because
yes.
that's
They were,
who they were friends of mommy and daddy. That was just how it was. Yeah.
yeah, they passed through our house on the
Mhm.
regular, right? And so, yeah, we don't often think about how that contributes
Mhm.
to the working out of a legacy, right? The things that you take for granted that are possible for you. And this is not to say that people can't transcend what appear to be limitations. This is not to say that at all.
Mhm.
But it is to say that sometimes having that example in front of you is really, really helpful, right?
It
And
is.
I
It is.
think
It
it's
is
been
helpful.
important for both of us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look, and I always say, just because somebody says that they love oranges doesn't mean that they're saying that they hate apples, right? And
Exactly.
so us celebrating our legacy and our ability to see the possibilities in our own home and in our family, that's not shade on anybody else who has a different experience. But
Not at
what
all.
we can talk about is our experience. What we know is our experience, and I am immensely grateful for our experience, because the thing is, honestly, it was never anything I felt I had to strive for. I mean this in the best possible way, because it was just there. It was like, oh,
Yes.
Daddy's bringing out another book. And do you remember Uncle Tony Phillips,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we studied his book was a textbook that
Yeah.
pretty much every West Indian student of a certain generation studied. That was Uncle Tony,
Yes.
right? So this
Yeah.
is just what we grew up around, and
Yes.
I'm
And
grateful.
we're extremely fortunate and privileged to have done so.
Hmm.
And I also want to take a moment to for the people that always look at a certain color of skin and assume there is no privilege. We may not have skin privilege, we have other privileges
Oh
that
yes,
I've talked about black privilege. I have talked about you know I mean, we grew up, my daughter's a third generation university graduate, right? We grew up because our parents were there, the first generation.
yes,
It was never a question for us as to whether that would be a path that we would follow,
yeah,
right? And the people that they hung out with were people in a similar situation. So, yes, Gillian, it was expected.
exactly. It was
And
expected.
welcome, Dee. Thank you for joining us live. Yes, it was expected. It was expected. Um, and when it's expected, you often don't think about it.
You don't. It
I
just happens. It just happens. I remember not so much wonder. I don't know why at some point, we all have these moments of self-doubt. I at one point really thought that I might not get into university. I was trying to get into University of the West Indies, and I don't ask. I was having a moment. I was having a moment of self.
Okay, okay, we have moments.
We have these moments, but the point is, it was not a question of whether I was going to university. It was a question of when. Similarly for you, and
Hmm.
you learned from daddy and mommy. I learned from you, daddy and mommy. That's who I
Yes.
learned from. So that's why mommy and daddy went to France. I think for their program, it happened in their third year, and then
Third
they went
year.
back to university for their final year. For me and you, it happened after our final year at university. But it's like mommy and daddy went to France, then you went to France. I'm like, well, I'll be going to France after I graduate as
as
well.
as they
Period.
say in Barbados, I ain't a body.
Yeah, understand?
I'm going to France too.
I will be going to France as well, because we saw it. You saw it, and then I saw it, and so we made it
Yes,
happen.
yes, yes, yes. And Jillian's here sharing.
Hmm.
Her parents and elder siblings went to university in Trinidad and Tobago and abroad. Um, and I also want to, can I highlight? Let me Highlight? Yes, I can highlight. Y'all, I am. This is only. I'm only a few uses into this technology, but we're making it work.
We're going to make it work. All is well.
We're gonna make it work, and then let me share from Linda. Sharing how your experiences shape what you do and who you become is one of the best ways we learn from and about each other. None of us is a monolith. Excellent point.
Yes, love that, Linda.
Right. Hello, Taryn. There we go.
Y'all are going to have to excuse me while I open my halls.
That's all right.
Listen,
That's
it's
all
either if you want coughing, I cannot do it, and if you want talking, then that's what I need to do.
right. All right.
Please
And
bear with me.
imposter syndrome. Oh, that is so right, Taryn. It is so right because often we believe that we can't do a thing, and sometimes the excellence that precedes us can feel like a lot to live up to as well. I remember I remember arriving for my first day at UE Cave Hill, and somebody met me because, of course, all our lecturers were contemporaries of our parents, right?
Yes,
Pretty much all. And they said, "Oh, are you going to get first like your dad?" Day one,
day one.
right? Day one. Newsflash, I didn't, but
Listen, I barely. It was so. I went through some stuff. Some of it is in the
yes,
book, but I went through some stuff, and as a result, I had been doing great. Went through a little bit of trauma, and so I
yeah.
I mean I graduated. It was not the brilliant grade that I had hoped for, but I graduated. I was happy. I was happy to have graduated. That is the truth, because I didn't get that, but you are an excellent student, Miss Miss Mrs. Hurley Hall. You're an excellent student. And so you got it about daddy. I got a bit about daddy, but of course I got it about you. And you had also been working in the university's bookshop. So it wasn't like everybody on campus knew you because everybody had to go to the
Now, here's the
bookshop.
thing, and this is classic introvert behavior. I didn't realize everybody on campus knew me.
Oh yeah.
This is news to me. This is news
Everybody
to
on
me. But
campus knew you.
anyway,
And
that is a
everybody
whole
on
other
campus knew
story.
you, and everybody on campus knew that we were sisters, right?
Yes.
If they didn't know initially, then they found out, and then they were like, "Oh," So it was just interesting. It was just interesting.
Yes, I'm bringing up a great comment from Rosemary Campbell Stevens. The more that we normalize that we are, in fact, the black gold of the sun, the more we step out of the blackness that was created for us into the blackness that
Mhm.
is. Ooh, I love
I
that.
love
Preach,
it.
my sister, preach.
Yes.
All
Oh my
right.
goodness.
So now, as the regular listeners will know, if you can have such a thing as regular listeners when you're 7 episodes in, that we normally have three segments: life, learning, and anti-racism.
Girl, you
What's
can't
this?
be saying things like that. I was like mid
While you're
drink.
taking a drink,
It was almost
right?
a snort laugh, but we got it together.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the legacy we inherited. So let us talk now about life. And I'm asking you here, sis, to share a lesson, a lesson from the book, or more than one. Let's see where the conversation takes us.
Mhm. Um, well, one of the topics I talk about a lot in the book, I talk a lot about rest,
Hmm.
and I talk about, how important it is. I have been rested, I have been burned out, I've experienced both. And since we're kind of like talking about lessons from the book and about legacy, lessons you've learned from your parents and so on, something that I realized, and I share this in the book, is that mommy actually taught us about the importance of rest. She taught us about the importance of getting help, um, as often as we possibly could. By we, I mean her, because she was paying the bills, right? As often as we possibly could. We had household help, right? Because she was not taking all of that on for herself, but by herself, I mean. And she also had a regular weekly nap time, regular every
I
Sunday.
remember that.
You remember that? Yeah.
I remember that. It
Yes.
was sacred.
It was sacred. Thou shalt not disturb.
Thou shalt not disturb.
Yes. If the house
And
is
to
going,
this day, To this
Girl,
day, if I know she is napping, I will not even knock on the door.
nope. Just
I'm
leave
a
her to
big
it.
heart that woman.
Yes, but it trained it taught us just by being in her ambit, right? Being around her, it taught us that rest is important. It is okay to prioritize it. And also something else I saw with both her and daddy was them having lives outside of work. They had hobbies, they had creative pursuits, they hung out with their friends. Again, many of the friends would come over, hang out at our home. There was, much playing of cards and so on and so forth, and what we in the Caribbean call liming at Old Top, right? Just having a
Yes,
great time and being able to enjoy life, be rested, pursue, and not just pursue, but embody life work balance, embody it
yes,
and live it. And so that's one of the lessons that I learned from our mom. And that is one that I share in the book, that it is important to prioritize rest. It is, and not just important, it is possible to do it. You have to
yes.
choose what you are going to prioritize. And I'm not saying don't work. I'm not saying, just go sit on a mountain and commune, with the leaves, right? That's not what I'm saying. Although if you want to do that, that's fine, right? But it is possible to do all the things, but have it in balance. And so that's one of
Yes,
the big
yes.
lessons that I learned and that I share in the book.
Yes,
Interested? Was it?
that was a lovely comment there from Linda.
Hmm.
Yes, I agree with you. And the older I get, the more I think about what is really important. What what will you wish you had done, right? And so try not to live your life so you have a bunch of things that you wish you had done, right?
Ooh, yes.
Right?
That's a good one.
And right, so you know you you
Yes.
make time to see people, you make time to hang out with friends, you make time for rest,
And
because for
mhm,
most of us don't necessarily wish we had spent more time on the day job, no matter how
absolutely,
meaningful it is to us. Or
absolutely not.
even, when we have a mission, we spend a lot of time on that mission, so we don't really need to spend more time because we're already dedicated.
Yeah.
But the things that you regret when you don't do them are the times that you did not spend
Hmm.
resting or spending time with the people who are near and dear to you.
Hmm. Or doing things that you love, such as writing books. I'm just
Such as
saying,
writing
such
books.
as writing books, such as writing books. Because actually, I have a question for you, if I may. So,
Yeah, sure,
um,
sure.
yeah, yeah. So, you first, what led you to first publish Exploring Shadism and all of that? I'm just curious because, I know my story obviously very, very intimately. I know a lot of daddies was probably driven by him being in academia. In academia, you have to publish, period.
Yeah.
So that was part of it. But like, what led you to even start that? Because you've always
Well,
loved writing, right?
I have always loved writing. I have always loved writing. It is true, and I have made my living as a writer for at least two-thirds of my life. Um, but exploring shadism was an interesting one because I had done this research for my master's back in the late 90s.
For your
Um,
first masters.
okay, for my first master's. I wasn't going to say that, but okay, yes, for my
I'm
first
always
master's.
I'm always thrilled that you have two. I'm like, what in the world? That's amazing.
Oh man, overachievers much. Anyway, there's a very good reason why I ended up with two, but um, yeah. And so I had done this piece of research, and I had thought at the time about publishing it. At the time, nobody was actually talking much about colorism. If I'd actually published it when the research came out, I'd probably have had one of the first books on it.
Yes,
But I didn't. So
all good.
but it wasn't as easy to get things published then. As a black author, as a black as an academic, as I was at the time, or I was about to be an academic, which I was for a short period.
Hmm.
But even so, to run the gauntlet, the publication gauntlet, because, publishing so white, publishing so male. And so I put it aside, but I never really forgot about it.
Mhm.
And then we got the opportunity afforded by Kindle Direct Publishing. And
Ah.
I thought, oh, I can publish it now.
Mhm.
And so I edited it very lightly.
And it was probably in good shape because I mean, bear in mind you had prepared this. This was it was your thesis essentially.
It was my thesis.
Yes, so
It
it was
was my
already
thesis.
edited to the
It, wa-
nines.
it was my thesis, and I received an excellent grade for it as well. And so it had been through lots of iterations. Actually, my professor at the time paid me a great compliment. He said it was one of the most readable examples that he had seen. But of course, I was a journalist, so
Yes,
I wrote it to be read and understood.
right.
Anyway, point being that I had this thing, and I thought, oh, well, why not just use this to test out the technology? I said to myself, right? And
So
so
Sharon,
I know. I mean, I need a piece of writing to test out the technology. Let me try this thing.
yes,
And so I did. And I went to one of these early places that had, images for book covers, and I found the perfect cover, which was
love it.
lucky because,
Mhm,
people always get your cover professionally designed, but I didn't in that instance,
mhm.
right? And everything came together, and I was doing it as an ebook, and it was when they first started letting you do print copies, and they said, "Do you want to click this button and do a print version?" I thought, "Why, yes, I do.
And you were like,
Thank you for
absolutely.
asking." And that's the story of how it came about. It wasn't so much a plan, not in the same way I'm Tired of Racism was,
Hmm, hmm.
as a series of serendipitous moments.
Right.
you know so that was really, really interesting.
Hmm.
And I'm glad I brought it out, and I keep thinking about doing a follow-up, but I haven't got to it yet. But that may well be in my future.
There's time. There's time. It was
one
always,
one
you
Yeah.
never know. It was always interesting to me that you also ended up. I remember once you asking me, you telling me, oh, Lisa, I don't even know how I became an activist and how I started doing all this stuff. And I was like, Sharon, early on, what are you talking about? Our, our parents were the most, and please, apologies for the stereotypes, but literally, but this was the 70s. So when I say the big afro, the dashikis, they were these people, right?
They were.
They were
They were.
very
I mean, I don't actually
black
recall,
power
like in my early childhood, hearing any music in the house that was not by a black artist.
ever.
Not
You're
not
right.
not in terms of actual records that they purchased. Yes, you would hear things on the radio, but the
Oh
stuff
yeah.
that was played in the house,
It was
all black
all
artists.
black artists,
Yeah,
black artists,
yeah.
black books, etc., etc. And our parents and the people again with whom they associated were very big into sort of the whole socio-cultural, socio-political sphere,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
black power, black agency, and so on. So that again,
I
that was the
suppose,
water in which you were swimming. Hmm.
yes, and I suppose that really came out. If you think about it, they had grown up under colonialism,
Hmm.
and many of those nations were newly independent.
Yes.
Right, a lot of the countries in the Caribbean gained their independence from Britain, between the early to mid 60s, and then there was another wave later on, like 20 years later.
Hmm.
And so a lot of those, it's like they had the chance to have the agency to express their true feelings without fear, without filter, all that kind of thing. And
Yes.
so that's the cauldron.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's what you that is the cauldron. That is the soup.
That is
The
the soup.
beautiful broth in which you were brought up, and also later on when you became, well, they call it a lecturer in the UK, a professor,
Hmm.
right? When you
Hmm.
became a lecturer, I just sat down and smiled to myself because I'm like, I don't think she can help it because it literally is in It's in your blood, you know. Because I remember you again. That was another thing. You were like, I don't know how I didn't intend to be. I never wanted to be a teacher. I'm like, well, here you are, and not only not only a lecturer, but then you actually created, what was it, syllab by buses? Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, well, yes, specialist journalism,
Hmm.
yeah, I did. But sometimes you feel like these things are happening to you by accident, but they really are not. It's all part of this legacy.
Yes,
And
necessity.
it's this legacy that you kind of imbibe with your mother's milk,
Hmm.
right? And you don't even realize that how much a part of you that is. And I'm feeling like I need to just show this legacy graphic again just for a second
Yeah,
because
and
right.
this is how it manifests. This is how it
Yes,
manifests. You know, nature
exactly,
and nurture come together, and then something like this happens. You know.
exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, okay, so moving on
Moving on.
moving on to our learning segment, because I felt like you were teasing us with some juicy revelations here. What have you learned in the process of publishing that you are willing and able to share? Spill some tea, sister.
One of the things I've learned is that publishing is expensive.
Ooh.
Publishing is expensive, both in any kind of resource you are thinking of.
Hmm.
Excuse me, any kind of resource you're thinking of. That's what I'm referring to. Um,
Okay.
it takes energy, of course. You know, mental, intellectual capital. It takes that from you, right? um, or it requires that. But also, it is expensive financially. It is expensive financially, and no matter, some people receive advances, some don't. The publishing industry, it can go all kinds of ways. It really
Hmm.
doesn't matter whether you self-publish, hybrid publish, or you're published by you're trad published. One
Yeah.
way or the other, you as the author are going to there are things you are literally going to have to pay for yourself. And
Right.
I don't think a lot of authors realize this, particularly authors who are traditionally published. And
Mm.
so it is unbelievably expensive, especially if you want to do it right, you know,
Yes.
especially if you want to do it
Give you
right.
the best chance, right? So
Yeah.
it's, I mean, sure, if you're Stephen King, right? If you're Stephen King, you can hand over your manuscript and go back home and write the next one,
Yeah.
right? But other than that, there's a lot that you have to do, right?
Yeah.
There's making sure that your cover is right. There's spending time on the editing. And you would think, of course, when trad publishing, some of this is done for you. But as the person whose name is going to be on that book, that is something you have to pay attention to so you get the
Yes.
book you want.
Yes.
Just
It,
as much as you do when you're self-publishing. If you
exactly.
want the book you want, you have to pay attention to those details,
You have, yes,
right?
God is in the details. The details matter. And so for me, because at some point in the middle of the journey, I was like, huh, I might not be doing this ever again. So if I never do this again, this is going to have to be this book is going to have to stand the test of time, right? It is exactly.
Beautiful.
If it's going to really hold its own in our publishing family tree, in our legacy, then I need to make sure that it is excellent. And
And it is.
so the amount of attention to detail, you actually, people say get help, and absolutely get help, but you actually really can't outsource anything. That was one of the things that I learned because of what you just said. Ultimately, it comes down to you, and it does
Yeah.
not matter if there's any error in the book or whatever. Nobody's going to be like, oh, the proofreader and oh, the editorial. No,
No.
they're going to blame the person, the author, the person
The
whose
person whose
name
name is on the cover of the book.
is on the front of the book, right?
Yeah.
And so because of that, um, and I thankfully, shout out to autism, thankfully I have a insanely good attention to detail when I need it. and so I was able to pay attention to all of the details about the cover, about making sure that fonts, on the cover on the inside matched, about making sure
And can
that
I just
people,
interrupt you?
yeah,
Because I want to let people know who they're dealing with here, right? This is the person formerly known as Hawkeye Hurley. This is a person who has a long and illustrious career in writing. And I mean, we always laugh about the fact that we both ended up in writing careers, right? She was just Rosemary, as far as I can tell, the stream is still live, but please check us out on YouTube, on either the Introvert Sisters channel or my channel, on Lisa's LinkedIn channel as well, and also on Lisa's Facebook. So
yes.
there are lots of places where you might be able to pick up the stream if it seems to have dropped on LinkedIn.
Mhm. And
Um,
and also try refreshing a couple of times. But definitely,
yes.
like Sharon said, we made sure that it's being simulcast in multiple places. So if for some reason this one isn't working, definitely go check out another one.
Yes, and I just wanted to say because you have worked in writing for marketing for decades,
Hmm.
right? Attention to detail is how you live your life in terms of your work life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
As well. And so really, really, you know really, really important to note that yes. I'm going to bring this one up. I'll bring this one up. Hawkeye Hurley for the
Yeah,
win.
people would ask me, like, I would be proofreading, I would proofread
Mhm.
something, and I would get asked all the, like, how did you see that? Like 10 of us looked at this and missed it. How did
Yeah.
you see that? So
And
I was that
yeah,
person.
and I'll tell you all, if I am doing a writing project that I care about, Lisa is one of the, if not the first person that I will run it by. Because
Ditto.
even though she says she's not quite as hawk-eyed as she used to be,
Mhm.
she is telling you she's more hawk-eyed than 99% of the population.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate
Right.
that. I
Anyway,
really
so
do.
you were saying that it's expensive. Publishing is expensive, even when
Publishing is
you're trad
expensive.
publishing.
Yes, it is. Even trad publishing is expensive, and so um, set aside a budget above and beyond. If you receive an advance, don't go. Don't do what. Don't go whiling out. Don't go to the club and be like,
Don't
like,
book a trip to the Bahamas.
no, no. Your advance is meant to go to marketing expenses and so on, and so save it for that. If you don't get an advance, you are going to need an advance like amount of money. Good luck. That's all I'm saying. And so, yeah, get into your savings, start saving money, set aside money, even do a fundraise or whatever, do something. But you are going. It's like any project. You need that 10-20% contingency, or maybe 30, 40, 50%. But anyway, but you need a contingency fund, because there are going to be things that come up that you need to pay for and take care of, as
Wow.
and pay attention to. So that's one of the things I learned. I learned also, it was reinforced for me, um, how lucky I am to have been educated in the Caribbean.
Oh, yes, do tell. I want to hear more about that.
Ah, how do I put this? We have this idea, a lot of people have this idea, even people, sometimes back home, that anything from foreign, as we would say, anything from foreign is better, and so on and so forth. Um, but I realized that I am, in fact, that I was equal to the task. I was equal to the
Right.
task. Um, I am an excellent writer,
You are?
and it might sound weird as somebody who's a career writer to say that, but bear in mind that a lot of the writing I do is for people whose sole job is to tear apart your writing, right?
Yeah.
But it was interesting to me to basically, because that's what it is, to produce um, a creative work of art for one of the world's top publishing houses and have it be received with basically no edits. When I say basically no edits, did they ask me to reduce the overall word count?
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I there were very few structural edits, very, very few. I've heard of other authors receiving their pages, they call them the pages, receiving their pages back, and they're just like a sea of strike throughs and red lines and so on. That was not my experience at all. And I credit that. I go back to Hinesbury Primary School. I go back to
Ooh,
growing up in
Mrs. Campbell.
Mrs. Campbell. Right. We totally butchered her name, but she was trying to teach us phonics. So CAMP is camp, and BELL is bell, right? Anyway,
Jillian
but
says equal and able to exceed expectations. But
exactly,
but
exactly.
there's something in that for sure. And I've spoken about this before, is that when growing up in the Caribbean, the gift of growing up in the Caribbean in a family, and in a culture that prized education, and in a family and in educational institutions that expected excellence, is that, and you will often hear us, I'm sure, if you listen to the Introvert Sisters, or you've heard Lisa and me speak, we've said, well, we didn't consider ourselves that great because there's like research scientists and prime ministers and this and that, who are in our orbit, who are well known, really famous people.
Yes.
Right. Right. And so it is like you're both excellent and humble.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but then often you realize when you come into other communities, into other spaces, you realize that what you received was at least equal.
If,
At least
and
equal.
usually better because
Yes.
I was not coming in there as you know somebody from quote unquote a third world country begging for favors, right?
No.
First, number one, Wiley approached me. That's number one. Wiley
Hmm.
approached me, and that is big, right? And
It
that was
is.
based on because they had been following my content for a while. So everything that I had been essentially publishing online, they were aware of. And based
Hmm.
on that, they approached me. I was able to write, was and am able to write in that way. Again, like Jillian said, because of primary school, because of going to Queen's College in Barbados. Um, it is
Yeah.
just, it just created this foundation of excellence, right? And so I was not at all worried about the writing.
I
About
know, right?
I was
People
not.
have asked me about that before.
No,
And that was, for me, that was never the hard part.
no, I was not. I was not remotely. Was I sometimes? The funny thing for me, well, you and I have two different approaches because you are misconcise and I am misuse every single possible word, right? And so I knew I was going to go over word count, and I did. But the words were beautiful words, and they were beautifully constructed, and the sentences were lovely, and the phrases were gorgeous
And
and
can I just
poetic.
say, I love that you are owning that brilliance. I
Thank you.
love that because so often we are taught to minimize our
Mhm,
gifts and
mhm.
to dim our light and to not be, not say with our full chest how excellent we are.
Yeah.
Right? There are things that we have to be humble about.
Mhm.
In your case, writing is not one of them.
No,
Right?
listen, again, I mentioned in the book, listen, I and Mummy Taryn and I were discussing this on our call just yesterday about how
Yeah.
mathematics is what humbles me. Right? I will have to be
Geography humbles me. Okay, geography humbles me.
Can't do it.
But
Cannot do it. But writing is my thing. It is one of my things. It is an innate talent that has then been honed by education. Because you and I were writing before we could really write properly. If you understand what I'm saying, we
oh
were
yeah,
writing
for
from
sure.
very
In our
young,
teens.
right? Very
Yes,
very young.
yes, Jillian. Own your brilliance.
Yeah, so there, so I don't, not only did I not enter with not even a smidge of, there was no of imposter syndrome. There was none of that, right?
Mhm.
I felt like I belonged from the beginning. But as I went through the process, I realized I'm like, wow, you really, really do belong and you are excellent. Because it blew my mind that editors who had edited some big books, right?
Mhm.
They weren't ripping apart my book. They were not. They were like, oh, this is great. Da 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 da. Some suggestions, very gentle. Can you actually? Most of these suggestions were, can you? People might need more detail.
Yeah.
I was always aware of word count, and so every now and then I would be like, "Ugh, maybe I should not." And every time I did that, they said, "Hey," and I sent the pages in. Exactly. Innate talents that have been honed. Yeah. Every time I thought, hey, Lisa, you're going to go over word count. Maybe you should dial this back and not give detail. There was once I mentioned something in one sentence and they said, you are going to have to tell everybody what happened. That was the one where I said, oh, I got fired because of racism. What turned into a few paragraphs, that was because of the developmental editor saying, you know,
Which actually, that actually leads us very nicely into our next section.
mhm.
Because this is life learning and anti-racism. So I am interested in how anti-racism intersects with your work. And you can talk about this either from the point of view of the publishing establishment or the content of the book or both or something else. I'm leaving that open.
um, anti-racism, because okay, let's put a pin in this because I'm seeing a question from Jillian. I
Yes.
expect them
Yeah.
to live it apart. Okay, so Jillian, let me answer your question. Um, I did not expect them to rip it apart. However, so in my 9 to 5, I'm a marketing copywriter. And what that means is, you of course you're not writing for yourself, you're writing on behalf of a brand, a client, and so on. So you do have to try to embody the voice of the brand, embody the voice of the individual campaign, and so on and so forth. However, what this means is spending a lot of time in copy review, day after day after day, of people, many of whom are not qualified,
We have the same look, same head tilt, right?
many of whom are not qualified, basically telling you why your writing sucks. And
That's
don't
got
get
to
me
take a
wrong,
toll.
yeah, and literally, I have been literally cussed out, like F bomb cussed out, about my writing and stuff that I've submitted before. And so this is the daily experience. And no matter how strong you are, that kind of experience can take a toll. And so I knew that I was equal to the writing. I knew my writing was good, but I had become so used to having my writing ripped apart that I almost, I was like, oh, well, I was just expecting a little bit more. Sorry, excuse me, this cough. I was expecting a little bit more in terms of, I guess, suggestions for improvement. And so that's where I was coming from. Not that I expected them to rip it apart, but I also was not expecting such wholesale acceptance. And that really warmed my heart because, again, Wiley is a company, a publishing house that is global. They're well known in the trade publishing field, in the education publishing field. And so they really know their stuff. And so I didn't need the cosign, but the cosign was lovely to receive. So yes, I hope that answered your question, Jillian. All right, Sharon. So anti-racism and my work, because of how I, you know, am in the world, how I look. I am a black woman. I'm now a black woman of a certain age. Um, I'm wearing my head wrap. Not necessarily. I used to sort of quote unquote play the game a little more, and I just don't.
Okay.
I can't
Who
hold
has
it.
the energy
I don't have the
or
energy.
the inclination?
Nope, 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 nope. And so um, I have so many tales, however, and those many of you, some of you have read the book or portions thereof already, and so I have little snippets of stories. More than snippets, actually. Each chapter contains a story from my life. But when I tell you that is not even a quarter or a third of some of the um, racially, yeah, I don't know how to even phrase it. Some of the experiences I've had that have racial overtones. So I
Yeah.
remember, I haven't include, you can include everything. I remember being in France, and one of my students actually wanted me to do some modeling. She was like, I'm a photographer, I'll bring you to my house, we'll do some photographs, no problem. I don't think that the family realized, for multiple reasons, that I could actually speak French. And yeah.
But further to our point, for those of us that had been at Queen's College and then UWI Cave Hill, we had been speaking French daily for something like 7 years.
Yes, yes. And
Anyway,
can I just say, because something else, this is another, um, that was another moment for me way back then when I realized, oh, I am more than equal to this. Because when
yes,
I heard some of the British students and their accents, I was
right?
appalled. I was like, have y'all graduated? Why y'all sound like what? How?
Yes.
Anyway,
Um, Language teaching is different in different places. Let's just say that. Very different. I had similar experiences with some of the students I met from different parts of the world, shall we say, lots of different parts of the world.
you're so
And I
tactful.
would
I'm sorry.
say, no, no, no. I'm just gonna, the education that we received
It was excellent.
was better.
It was,
I'm just gonna come out and say it. It was better at
yeah,
that time.
yeah.
Anyway, tell us about this story.
Yeah, so
So
I'm there, and so it is my student, her boyfriend. That was very interesting because the she said, oh, the boyfriend is going to pick you up at the station on the so I was like riding on the back of a scooter thing up a mountain. I was like,
things
Lord,
you do when you're 21, huh?
God.
Right?
I was like, Lord have mercy. My mother did not raise me to do foolishness like this, but here I am. Anyway, so I'm in the house, we're in the middle of the thing, and then the grandmother is who is there because everybody's, yes. He
Oh, I
says,
can
oh,
imagine.
wow, something about me not having a tail, and about how she didn't realize that they had feet just like ours.
Of
But I could understand every word that she was saying.
course you could.
And then
Boy,
I
I thought
was,
I thought I had it bad. Wow.
they will say anything. And so therefore, I don't believe it is possible, no matter whether you choose to express it or not. It is not possible to go through life in this construct that we're in right now, right? In this timeline, as people say, racialized as black, and not have those kinds of experiences. At some point or another, they are coming for you, those experiences. It's coming. Just wait. You will experience
And
it.
yes, and can I just add that growing up in a Black majority country does not exempt you from those experiences.
Mhm.
First time I was called the N word, I was living in Trinidad and Tobago.
Mhm. That, I don't think I even had realized that, sis. That is horrible. I mean, I knew that that had happened. I didn't realize it
Yeah,
was.
yeah, yeah. It was a white barman at the SCR who
Mhm.
thought that I was some little kid off the street until our professor father came and set him straight.
Right?
Right.
Jeez.
Anyway.
Yeah. So I bring all of me into my writing, which includes my experience of the world as somebody racialized as black. So yes, there are particularly in the Working While Black chapter. There are whole stories about myself dealing with um, racist racist bosses and colleagues and so on, and navigating those spaces, navigating spaces where people not only don't know who you are, but don't care to find out who you are. Navigating spaces. I remember actually once being at lunch, and this was in the 20s, right? In the
Yeah.
2000s, right? So
Yeah.
comparatively recently, being at work with somebody, and one of them was about to go to Paris, and I was like, first of all, you see, this is why I always say I didn't want to go to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just start there.
First of all, you didn't want to go to lunch.
I didn't want to go to lunch, but I felt I had to go to lunch because, of course, I'm an introvert. If
Yeah.
I don't go, then it's going to show up on my performance review. Da, 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 da.
Yeah.
I went to the people's lunch. So we're talking, so okay, we had lunch, we're talking about going to Paris, but guess what? I've been to Paris more than once. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they're talking, and I'm like, oh, blah, and I'm throwing in my little bits and pieces. And one of them swings round this, almost
Like
existential.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
you have been to Paris? And but it was like the way that it was asked, like just the like they could not conceive.
Oh
They could
man.
not conceive that where they were about to go to, I had already been to more than once, that I was fluent in the language of the country, that I have, even though I'm not as fluent as I once was, my accent is pretty near impeccable,
Yes.
right? I think I speak, and I think we speak newscaster French, right?
Yes. Sounds like some, as they say.
There you go, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just having to deal with all of those experiences all the time, and all of that informs my writing.
Okay.
And
Yes.
it is one
Understood.
of the reasons why in the Working While Black chapter, I also not only outline all of the elements, all the 12 elements of Working While Black, but then I also say, hey, colleagues, companies, this is what we require of you. If you are who you claim to be, or
Mm-hmm.
you would like to imagine yourself to be, then this is what is required of you. This is how you are required to show up as an ally.
Yes.
What's this
Okay.
question? Do you think these experiences from Linda, do you think these experiences are meant for us to learn from, or are some or many of them so unnecessary and we could definitely have lived our lives without them?
That's a great question.
Oh, Linda.
Um, I think in some of those experiences have set me on the path that I'm on now. And so, in that respect, I am grateful for them. They absolutely sucked at the time. And I don't think I needed to have as many of them to be on this path.
Yeah, yeah,
There's like one or two pivotal ones. I could have had those two and lived the rest of my life in blissful ignorance, right?
exactly.
Without having to. That's how I feel. I don't know. How do you feel, sis?
I feel a bit of that, and what but one thing I also realized though is that could I have written a book 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Absolutely, right? But I could not have written this book.
I agree with you. Same for me.
Yes, right.
It would not have been the same book if I had not had those experiences. And I think that both of our books are important and necessary.
Mhm.
And so maybe we
Yeah,
had to have those experiences. Damn it.
exactly. Because they bring that fire and that lack of apology and that ability to say things with your chest and mean them and stand by them, and have a perspective and a point of view, and just stand 10 toes down and defy anybody to tell you any different.
Yeah, yeah,
You
I
know?
get it. Still hate
Yeah,
having had them, but yeah, the book would not be the same without them. For
exactly.
sure. For sure. For sure. As Ree says, I have to aspire to newscaster French. Well,
Bonjour.
we are now about to go over time. I have a couple. I hope you all are going to stick around just for a couple more
Please do.
minutes while we wrap this up. Okay, so as we come down to the end of this, what do you hope will be the legacy of your book if you have thought about this at all?
So I would like my book to be a portal and a conduit to healing. I would like my book to be a living, breathing artifact that enables elevation. I would like for my book to, well, very literally, I would like for my book to be in the West Indies collection in the University
Oh,
of the West
yes.
Indies. So
Right.
anybody who's listening that can make that happen, holla at your girl. But yes, no, I really right now, and I don't know, the sales are salesing, right? I don't know what metrics I should be aiming for because this is the first time that I've done this, right? So I don't know if the sales are going well, if they're going badly. I don't know. I haven't yet spoken to the publisher about that. Of course, I would like the book to sell well, right? Because this is bigger than you or me. It is your book selling well and my book selling well and books by Black authors in general selling well makes it easier for those coming behind us to get book
Absolutely.
deals. And specifically in your case and mine, because we are we are daughters of the diaspora, right?
Yes.
Um, it is not expected, unfortunately, for people with our kind of accent and our kind of skin tone and so on. And the accent is important.
The accent is very important.
Accent is important because there is this view that if you're from the Caribbean or from a quote unquote third world country, which doesn't exist, but whatever, right? It doesn't. If you're
They
from a,
don't expect, the powers that be don't expect excellence and competence from the
they do
so-called
not.
third world.
They don't. They don't. Um, and so that is one of the reasons why I want your book, my book. There's so many authors that Janice Gassamasari,
Mhm.
Z Clark, just all of the authors, all of them, um, who are black and especially who are black and female. I want us all to do well. I want us all our books to sell well. So of course that's part of it. This is part of the matrix in which we're living. Those metrics matter. So yeah, I want lots of sales. I want lots of reviews. All of
You
those
want
things.
lots of speaking engagements.
Lots of speaking engagements. All of that. But the truth is, when I was writing this, I did not have any of that in my mind whatsoever. Not, I was not even remotely concerned. What I was concerned about when I was writing was what is the reader experience going to be like? How is the
Yes.
reader going to receive this? Is
Yes.
the interior of the book going to pay off the title of the book? The book is called Space to Exhale. Are they actually getting opportunities to exhale? Right? So making sure that those experiences are delivered for the readers in the book, making sure that to the best, as best I can, that when people open the book and read it and interact with the content, they feel a wave of relaxation. They feel seen, they feel understood, they feel loved, they feel held, they feel encircled by community and by somebody who loves them. That's what I want for the book, for it to really help people.
Well, I was going to ask you for a final takeaway, but I think you have actually just wrapped it up. And so I am going to urge everybody to buy Lisa's book. I always have a book recommendation, and my book recommendation this time is, of course, Space to Exhale. It
Thanks.
really is an excellent book, part memoir, part meditation, part self help, all heart. Buy
Oh,
the book. Buy the book. So, with that, I just want to say thank you for joining me as my first guest on What Sharon Said. I'm delighted that we've been able to bring your book to more people. Thanks to everybody who tuned in. Really appreciated the busy comment section today.
hmm
Um, and yeah, we will see you in the online spaces. You know where to find us on LinkedIn, on all our different channels, and go to space to exhalebook.com. Run, don't walk. Buy the book. And I speak on behalf of all published authors, please leave a review when
Please,
you have read the book.
please, and thank you.
Please leave the. Oh, well, here we go. I'm going to leave Latrice with a final comment. Buy at least 5 books. When you read it, you will want people you love to read it too. And
Oh,
that is the truth. So
Latrice, I
thank you
didn't know
very
you.
much, y'all, for being here. And I will see you next time on What Sharon Said.
Bye, everyone.